In today's podcast, I am joined by not one, but two guests with brothers Duncan and Neil Campbell, who are here to talk all things golf and their unique tipping service, Golf Betting Club. Gentlemen, do you want to kick things off by introducing yourselves one at a time and a little bit about each of you?
Thanks, Pete. I'll go first. So I'm Duncan. I'm the older of the two brothers. And we obviously Golf Betting Club, we set up in June last year after the little hiatus that we had for coronavirus and the break in play on both the European Tour and the PGA Tour. And I'll hand you over to Neil to introduce himself.
Hi there, I'm Neil. I'm a younger sibling and the brains behind the operation. No, that's a lie. I just do all the donkey work for Duncan. But yeah, not much more to add. I'm just loving the journey so far and great to be on.
Great. Well, it's great to have you on. I know, Neil, as a younger brother myself, having an older brother, I can certainly relate to your circumstances. But we're going to talk about actually golf being in the family because your father was a golf journalist, and so it's clear that golf is in the blood. But there are many ways to get involved in golf, but perhaps betting wouldn't be the first thing that would come to mind. So talk me through, where the love of golf betting came from.
Yeah, I can take that one. So basically, our love for golf started, I suppose, when our father was a journalist. He used to take us along to various tournaments. So we used to go to Loch Lomond, Gleneagles, Wentworth. So in the early days, it was all about getting balls off the golfers. Standing at the 18th green. Duncan was always irate that I was the cuter brother and got all the balls, but moving on. Anyway, our dad was a little bit of a gambler as well, and I've got fond memories of him in the early days with the racing post when we were in our teens, and he sort of give us a pound each way on a few picks and stuff. So it really created the excitement of going to the tournaments for us. So I guess that's where it sort of all stemmed from, and then it just grew and grew from there. We were both big gamblers in our uni days and probably spent too much time on that front instead of actually studying. But it just kind of grew from there. We've always been passionate about golf. Yeah.
Great. How was your dad, in terms of his betting? Was it? Did you learn good habits or bad habits?
Well, he's not betting anymore in golf, so that's about all we can say on that.
All right. Oh, great stuff. And so golf betting now, that's your main livelihood, is that right? Or do you combine it with other work?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix, really, Pete. We both got other interests as well. For all Neil's mockery of university and everything else, we both got our financial background, and that's kind of, we have a mix of interests at the moment. But obviously, Golf Betting Club is kind of been our passion and our kind of our interest for the past 18 months since we've launched it, and we're hugely proud of it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that because we just penned a review. We're recording this prior to it being published, but by the time this is released, it will be out, and we've done a thorough review of your service. We've been monitoring it for a while, and it's really impressive. No doubt we'll talk about that a little later on. But walk me through then. Obviously, you love golf and had a passion for betting. But how then did you manage to talk me through the journey of enjoying golf and enjoying betting, but then actually being able to make it profit for you? How did that go? Were you profitable straight away, or has there been a lot of lessons learned along the way?
So I think, you see from our website that we've been betting on golf for 20 years, and it's gone through various different iterations over the years. At university, when there's maybe other interests in life, you maybe bet on the odd golf tournament here and there, and then as life kind of changes, maybe you'll pick up golf a bit more. But it's always been there in the background, I think, for both of us. And as the years have gone by, we've kind of grown more and more into golf, and the profitability has gone up and up and up the more time that you dedicate to it. I think so for us that we kind of reached the kind of culmination point, and when coronavirus hit last year, of let's kind of get all our knowledge down in a website format, and let's kind of start helping other people make money. Just to kind of, we'll come on until later on, I'm sure, but we kind of reached the point where a lot of bookmakers had kind of stopped letting us bet, at least a decent amount anyway. And and Golf Betting Club really kind of gave us that vehicle to help other people make some money, and really kind of take the bookmakers for a bit of profit.
Yeah, I no doubt that's part of the issues, isn't it? Getting your bets down. And I find as well with betting income, I find a lot of people who are sharp have another way of generating the income. Maybe it's running a tipping service or doing something outside of it, just because betting income is so unpredictable. But I'm intrigued to know about your process in terms of finding value on golf. I know there's a lot of tipsters on golf that all have different angles. What's your approach based on? I know you mentioned when we were chatting. I think it's Keith Elliott's golf form book was kind of a key component in your golf knowledge. But walk me through some of the other aspects on that as well, if you like, about how you start to find value in the golf betting markets.
Yeah. So Keith Elliott's book was, I should have mentioned earlier. We read that from early ages as well, and it's really all about profiling players, finding out their strengths and weaknesses. So that is kind of what we've modelled our player profiling on our website. So if you look, I think we've currently got about 100. Is it 125, Duncan?
Yeah, I think we've got just over 125 now.
And we're looking to sort of grow that every year. But also we're looking to fine tune it, and it's always a learning curve as well. There's some information on there that we realised this year we aren't using as much, but it still takes up the time. So we're looking to fine tune that over the winter break, and basically just I've lost my train of thought there.
But you talk about player profiling, and that's really interesting because it's a different angle. A lot of people use stats and other kind of metrics, but you're looking, and that's a key component of the the messages that you send and the write-ups. You're looking at how people cope with, whether it be the wind, the conditions, pressure. Talk me through again, if you can explain maybe about the detail that you go in, and maybe give some examples of some golfers where you've had success by backing them at the right time, or backing them in the conditions, or backing against them when maybe you feel like they're not going to handle the pressure.
Yeah, I think it's like Neil said. I mean, like Elliott's golf form was kind of the basis, I guess, of what became our kind of golf betting journey. I can remember every year when that annual came out, it was kind of get down to the bookshop, pick it up, read it from cover to cover, see what had changed from the previous year, see who he thought was going to have a good year, and that kind of player analysis, I guess, really stuck with both of us. And I think that maybe that's something that differentiates us from maybe a lot of the tipsters that are out there at the moment. So, you'll find a lot of people maybe focus on quite heavily on stats. And by all means, like, stats have their place. I'm not going to sit here and say that we don't look at stats, because we obviously do. They play a huge part. But for us, it's knowing the players, and quite often that's just through experience. And the kind of player profiles, that's the culmination of us watching golf for 20 years. Now, not every golfer is going to have played in the last 20 years, but we've watched enough golf over that period of time to kind of get a feel and get an understanding of each golfer. And we're kind of heavily player focused. So we might look, for example, who's had a baby, who plays well in wind, who's got a landmark birthday coming up, that kind of thing. And a lot of those ideas were ideas that came from Keith all those years ago. And we've just kind of looked to continue that and develop it where we can. And that's really our approach to how we look to find players to bet on every week.
Yeah. So is that the way you maybe build up a shortlist? Because you might have 140 golfers in an event, and then you start to whittle it down based on those golfers that you feel are suited to the course, or in the right mindset or the right setup for a particular course. Talk me through, if you will, what else you'd look at, to build up a shortlist. And because most people, when they're confronted by a golf field, they don't know where to start, or maybe they look at the front end of the market, or who's the favourite, but because it's a bit daunting really to kind of try and break it down to a short list of 6 players, which you often do from 140.
Yeah, I think our tournament previews are always the basis where we start. So we work our way through the features of the course, who it's going to suit, the strengths and weaknesses. Like if it's a long course, you can immediately rule out, I don't know, sometimes half the field in the PGA Tour. they just can't compete on courses of yardage. The weather is quite a big one for us, which we feel the odds compilers don't really take into account to feature the odds. So yeah, we're always checking the forecasts. That's really a big one. We're looking at obviously recent form and course form, but more to do with each tournament, which is a bigger factor in previous editions. So some tournaments, are heavily course form, and some are more recent. We look at the profile of previous winners, so kind of like their CV up until that point where they won that week, and that gives us a good idea how to profile what we're looking for. So no, there's all sorts. Obviously, we look at the stats too. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
And what would you say?
Sorry, but I don't think there's a one size kind of fits all approach. I think like Neil said, it kind of varies from week to week. I mean, you look at somewhere like Colonial, for example, and I think something like of the last 20 odd winners, like 15 have had a top 10. Something ridiculous like that. So whereas other events, course form isn't really relevant at all. You've just got to be mindful of what the challenge is of that particular week and kind of tailor your approach. I think if you kind of consistently have the same angle of attack every week, I think that's when you'll perhaps run into a few problems.
Mm-hmm. So you need to be flexible. Obviously, you have that experience of so many years watching golf, betting on golf to fall back upon. So the ins and outs of each course and each player. But obviously, having two people, how do you work it out? You might have a strong opinion, Duncan, versus Neil. You might be on the opposite side. How do you work out? What do you do when you clash on players, and how do you filter it down so you both agree?
It depends. Do you have a brother?
Yeah, I do. I have an older brother like you.
Well, you know how it goes, and you just keep arguing until one backs down. No, I think usually we like to put our sort of point across and listen to each other's view, and then we ask each other, how strong are you in this, and we eventually, by going back and forth, get to it, and quite often we do come to the compromise in the end, and those tend to be the good results, don't they?
Yeah. I think also being brothers helps. Like for all that we joke about, we fight and we disagree. I think the fact we can say anything to each other, we can say you're talking absolute nonsense there, and although it won't be as polite as that generally, but the fact that we're able to talk in kind of frank terms to each other and really get to the heart of the kind of point of issue, I think that really helps us. And like we don't always agree, but that's just the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, and do you independently build your shortlist and then go try and see if you overlap? Because I imagine if you both of you independently pick out the same golfer, then that must be quite powerful. So
yeah, quite often we'll drop a shortlist. I mean, sometimes we'll do it together, but quite often we'll go away. We'll kind of look at our own things. I mean, like the thing about it is that when you kind of know the players and you maybe read about them and you go off and I'll read one article and Neil will read another. Neil might know something about a certain player that I don't know about, and vice versa. And I might like a player strongly, and he'll say, have you seen this article on such and such? It said that he was struggling with an injury or something in his personal life's affecting him, and that could change the whole picture. What might have looked like a strong bet now suddenly changes into a bet that we wouldn't take on. And it's like that thing, isn't it? Like, 4 eyes are better than 2. And it just kind of gives you that extra reassurance that you're not missing anything.
Absolutely, yeah. I've certainly seen that in the past, where if you pick out a golfer and then I have other tipsters that prove to me you pick out the same golfer, often it's a much stronger performance level can be seen from those kind of bets or long term, because independently you've all identified something of value. But so how much time does it take then? I think people sometimes sit back and think, you just pick out 6 golfers out of the hat, or if the racing tipster just looks has a casual glance at the racing post. But I presume there's a heck of a lot of work that goes in. Talk me through an average working week and how much time goes into all of this.
Yeah, I mean, you can put as much as you want into golf betting, and I think both of us are of the same mindset that we just want to know as much as possible about the tournament. So we can find ourselves in the wrong end of our girlfriends sometimes, spending too much time in the evenings researching. So yeah, very rarely does a day go by of the week that we're not looking into some aspect, especially with, we're heavily in play focused as well as pre-event. So we've got our in-play blogs after every round. So that's 6 blogs a week. And then you're always thinking about the next event, even on a Sunday. So there is a lot of time that goes into it.
Yeah. So it's a real passion. Obviously, you've got to enjoy it, and you've got to have people around you that support you to do all of that. And you talked there about in-play betting, and that's a big component of what you do. So are you watching every round take place? So you sat there in front of the TV watching, each tournament as best you can?
It's pretty rare that one of us isn't watching.
Yeah.
Normally both of us, but yeah, it's very rare that one of us hasn't sort of been watching the footage to get a better insight. Yeah, so we're just passionate about it. We love watching it. Like we get excited, and the season stops at the end of the year, and like you're coming to this point of the season now, and it's kind of like, oh, what do we do now? Luckily, we've got loads to crack on with our player profiles and stuff. But you do miss tournament play, don't you?
Yes, you definitely do. In December time, it gets a bit quieter, or the event's quite as compelling. So, in terms of what in play, when you're watching, is that informative to you? Are you looking at something with a player? Are you watching something about swing, the conditions, or are you more looking into the stats at that point of view? Maybe there's a player who has an average putting game, but then one particular day he's on fire. Everything he puts goes in. And then you're obviously looking, he reverts. What's the balance and breakdown there, and what you're looking for from an in-play perspective?
So I think from in-play, it kind of varies to a certain extent. And there's quite often players that we'll back and play. And if you read the in-play blogs on our website, you'll see that sometimes there's players at quite high odds that we like who maybe aren't the greatest week to week. They're maybe not capable of stringing together 10, 12, 16 good quality rounds in a row and kind of having a multitude of good results. But what they are sometimes capable of is stringing together, 3 or 4 good rounds. And those 3 or 4 good rounds are enough to either place each way or to even win. So like Jim Herman, for example, is a real favourite of ours. He's a golfer that doesn't always do it week to week, but his ability, under pressure, and to turn in 4 rounds seemingly out of nowhere, makes him kind of someone that's worth keeping an eye on. And it's those kind of players, I think, that we particularly look out for, because they're the players that the bookies might dismiss quite readily. Just because they don't do it frequently doesn't mean that they're not a player to watch out for. I was kind of banging the drum quite heavily about Martin Traynor the other week on the PGA Tour, and we put him up the week before he almost won. We put him up at 2,500 to 1. And he was a player of interest, and he didn't do it the week that we put him up, but the very next week he was 5 holes away from winning on the PGA Tour. And like, just kind of keeping an eye on those players in play can sometimes be quite beneficial. But in play, but we'll kind of also look at stats, and we'll read the interviews as well. I think sometimes the interviews are kind of really significant in what we'll do. After the first round, for example, the player might disclose that he saw his coach the previous couple of days, and they just something clicked in his swing, for example, and he's absolutely flushing the ball. Now that might the stats or the previous week's form might show that he was hitting the ball terribly, but the fact that he worked with his coach on a Monday and Tuesday, and it all came together on Thursday in the first round or Friday in the second round, can change the picture immensely. And he goes from someone, again, who you might not bet on, to someone that you can really say, there's a tangible reason why we want to bet on him here.
No, that makes sense. And often you can find some pretty good odds. Maybe you get a player who's maybe even 3 or 4 shots off the lead, but because he's not a name or no one's really paying attention, you might get 100 to 1 about him. And sometimes, like you say, it's worth a bit of a stab in the dark, hoping that maybe this week it's going to be his game or things fall for him. Like you say, maybe something's happened behind the scenes. So yeah, that's really interesting. And how about the difference between, obviously the PGA Tour is the main event, and that takes all the focus, and the European Tour? What's your preference? And do you find either to be easier to work out or easier to profit from?
think it's an interesting one. Our results have kind of varied of success with European Tour and the PGA Tour. Obviously, we see every week on the European Tour on a Sunday extreme price changes and drama, and Duncan likes to call it the bottler's paradise. But no, it just depends on the tournament, to be honest. The tournament is, once we assess the tournament and the profile of the winners there and who places, that kind of leads us to where the value might be. So some tournaments are better than others. I don't think you can categorise the PGA Tour and the European Tour from a betting angle anyway. I don't know if Duncan agrees there.
I think the one thing I would say is that we've seen a lot of the better players in Europe kind of gravitate towards America of late, and that's always happened to a certain extent. But I think, like, certainly in the last kind of 12 to 18 months since Corona and everything else, it seems to be that on a Sunday, or the quality of play on the European Tour has diminished, and that's kind of evident on a Sunday when you've got players fighting it out who really, really struggle to get a win, whereas the depth of field in the PGA Tour is obviously a lot deeper, and the players capable of winning in America are much greater, are much more, than the number of players that can win in Europe. So I personally prefer PGA Tour, because I think that you can get a high odds winner who's capable of winning, whereas in Europe it's not always that way.
Yeah, I mean, I like to joke and say something's going on European Tour now, a bit like the Bottler's Paradise. I watched the tournament, I think it was the Portugal Masters, when almost like no one wanted to win. The last 5 holes was Peters and Pavon and then Hodgegard, or it was just ridiculous. It was like slapstick at one point. No one could put it. Everyone was putting it in the water. But yes, it's interesting because obviously the European Tour markets are not as liquid and perhaps not as money in them. So sometimes it's a question: is there potentially a more of an angle there versus the PGA markets, which conceivably should be a bit more efficient? But certainly it's more consistency on that side, on the PGA certainly. Let's then talk about bookmakers getting your bets on. You said you've been betting on golf for many a year. How are you able to get your bets on these days? Talk me through, if you use bookmakers, exchanges, what's your approach?
It's basically a constant struggle for us to get bets on. I'm limited, very few, to the point where it's almost pointless putting on whatever they offer you, £2 each way or whatever. It's just not worth it for the time we put in. You can always get a bet on. No, there is people you can contact, or there's always ways. But we do use the exchanges a lot as well. A mix.
Yeah.
There's a good story here, Pete, and I from my student days had a Bet365 account, and for years and years and years, despite the fact that, like, after finishing being a student and taking plenty of money off them, it'd obviously been marked down as a mug account, or account not worth looking further into, and they didn't close it down for a long time, and it used to cause Neil all kinds of irritation. The fact that I had this account that seemingly was just an untapped well of profit, and Neil just couldn't, for the love of money, understand what was going on and why my account hadn't been shut down.
I would just need to win £50 to be shut down, and he's carrying on winning all sorts of money.
But certainly interesting with Bet365, because they restrict by sport versus like across the board. Well, most of the time I've seen some accounts where they've just restricted it full stop. But it's interesting to see that. Definitely, you can, I've seen accounts where it can't get 50 pence down on a race, but you can stick $500 down on a golfer. So it's interesting how they work. So you say you've got people. Do you put any bets on in shops, or do you, take any of those angles? Or is it just a matter of using friends or different methods to get your bets on as best you can online?
Yeah, I mean, the place terms, definitely pre-event, the place terms in the shops aren't great, especially on the PGA Tour. You get like sometimes 8, 9, 10 places, 11 in the majors, but I know a lot of shops only do the 5 places in the shops, so you basically lose the value there straight away. So yeah, we tend to just get someone to put it on if we need it on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the most the focal point for you guys is exchanges, right? You're pretty busy on them pre-event? Because I've been following your tips, and I find the odds, maybe with bookmakers, whether you've got accounts or not, could be a struggle. But I can always beat, or at least match, if often beat the odds by taking an exchange price.
Yeah, I mean, we can't advise the exchange prices, obviously, because they change, and quite a lot of our market is US based now as well. So I'm not sure they can get on all the exchanges.
It just kind of varies. I mean, I think that like there's sometimes that you just can't, even though with all the best will in the world, there's sometimes that you can't get a bit on. So you use the exchange, and running as well. Bookmakers are particularly fearful. And like when I'm talking in running, I mean when the golf's actually live on the TV, not at the end of the round. But like if they leave a price out there, for example, and the player eagles, for example, they're quite wary of getting caught. Having hung a price out there, and then that price should be the price. So it can be difficult, and sometimes the exchange is the only place to get a bet on. But certainly, if there's a bigger price, then we'll always look at it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in play, certainly that's an angle that I've not really seen many tipsters use from the point of view. But golf allows that because you've got generally unless there's I think last week we had the Joburg Open where there's all kinds of shenanigans going on with COVID and lightning and what have you. But generally, you have time at the end of the day to make a thoughtful decision. Do you want to get involved in the next day? And you can run the stats. Whereas a lot of in play is like, need to be there straight away, place that bet, whether it be on cricket at the end of an over or football within a minute or two. But golf allows that. How much of your betting is in play then for now these days versus pre-match? And do you think there's a better angle in play, or do you think pre-event is still the way to go?
This one, if you want, Neil. So I think that they both complement each other, and I think if you're just betting pre-event, I think you're missing in-play opportunities, and I think vice versa. If you're just betting in-play, you're probably missing a lot of pre-event stuff as well. I think for us, we probably value them, equally as importantly. I think that there's a lot of good in-play opportunities for the reasons I mentioned before, in terms of players that might not have looked great pre-event, but you find out something and they suddenly become a bet in play. And I think that for us, it's constantly about just evaluating your position. Just because you've picked someone out pre-event, they could, for example, be playing terribly for the first couple of days, but just have a hot putter. And you're not as confident that they're going to see the job out as you maybe once were. And I just think in play gives you that extra angle, that extra kind of way of making profit that I think you'd be kind of foolish not to take part in it.
Yeah, I'm surprised I'm not seeing more people take advantage of it. Because there's a time element that gives you that time to get bets out and get bets on if people are following. So I'll be intrigued to see if more people follow your approach. Certainly, I enjoy it. Reading the in-play blogs are actually really illuminating. I don't watch. I don't often get a chance to watch every event. Maybe I'll watch it on Sunday when things are kind of cranking up. But I actually really enjoy reading your in-play analysis to say, the conditions were here, or this kind of happened for this particular player. I find it really interesting actually to kind of gauge the progress of the tournament. And
I'll just add to that. I think it's a time thing as well. You mentioned a lot of people aren't doing it, and that's another benefit of having two of us at Golf Betting Club, because between the two of us, we do have the time to assess every round on each tournament. So it's just another bonus to what we do. So
yeah, sure, the value of working as a team, certainly. Let's talk as well about golf. Golf's always been a challenging sport mentally when you play it, certainly. But betting on it certainly also has its challenges. You're betting at high odds, low strike rate. How do you cope with obviously the pressure of your own bets and their performance, but also now running an advisory service where people might have perhaps certain expectations, maybe unrealistic expectations of what they can achieve, and the kind of losing runs that certainly always happen with golf. Walk me through how you cope with that.
Difficult. I don't think there's any denying that golf is a kind of unique sport in terms of highs and lows. You can go from 1 week having 100 to 1 winner, or 200 to 1 winner, and then you could go a few weeks where you don't get anything, and you start to question yourself. Do I need to change? Am I not spotting the information? Have I become complacent? There's just so many things that when you don't get a result in a particular week, you can start adding these things up. And you start bemoaning your bad luck, and suddenly the world's against you. But I think the kind of key thing is stick to the process. Like if you've shown over the years that you're profitable, and you get good results, I think where you go a couple of weeks where you don't get a result, it's just important to kind of fall back on that kind of core of what makes you profitable in the first place. So like for us, it's the player profiles. And if there's a couple of weeks where we don't get it right, which inevitably happens to everyone, for us it's like going back to the player profiles, reading up, improving the kind of knowledge and a kind of base kind of knowledge of what we've got, and then go back to it and look at it again. And inevitably, like, things will change, and you'll get the profits that your work deserves to a certain extent. I think golf betting to a large extent is that what you put in essentially is what you get out. And if you kind of put the time in like we do, then you'll get profitability. But it's certainly a tough mental journey at times. There's no denying that.
Yeah, because you've only got 2 events most weeks. Some weeks only one, and then there's only one winner, and then you've got to wait another week and do all that work again, and that can be quite a grind. Have you found, though, running golf betting club since last year, has that helped or hindered your own golf betting in any way, do you think? Or I imagine it's helped it because you're putting more time into it.
Yeah. In terms of like hugely beneficial. I think like writing things down as well at the end of the day, it seems like a small thing, but analysing the in-play round after each round is hugely beneficial. Just clarifying those thoughts in your head and kind of having to make that case on paper for betting on X golfer or Y golfer, or even discounting another golfer. Just having the kind of putting the keys down on the screen, you kind of get a sense of, right, what action am I taking here, and kind of like clarify. Well, certainly for me, Neil might feel differently, but certainly for me, it clarifies the position in my head.
Yeah, I think the best spell I've personally ever had, I think you had a good spell at that time as well, was straight after the COVID break when we'd built all the profiles, actually. Because we'd spent so much time looking into these profiles and picking up so much knowledge. I think that first couple of months, especially if you look back at our results, some of the winners we were pulling out were exceptional. We didn't even manage to match that this year, but that's what we're going to do again. We go into the winter break and we sort of build our knowledge again. We keep building it every year, and hopefully we'll come out firing out the blocks again in January. So,
but it's part of that process of not looking month to month almost as well. You're talking there, this year's not been as good as last year, but you have to view the whole 18-month period, I suppose, as one block, and kind of look at it from that point of view and say, well, if I make 25% return on investment over 18 months, that's fine. Well, I'm not going to make that over every 18 weeks necessarily, or every 18 tournaments, but long term, because obviously one big winner, whether it be Trainer, was it Martin Trainer, the guy who was 1,000 to 1 or something, you tipped up the week before, maybe you'll be on in the right tournament. So handling that pressure, though, it's tricky, though, isn't it, to handle going months without having a big winner. That comes to bankroll management, how big a part of your own betting and the work you do is having the bankroll management and the staking plan in place to make sure you keep things on a level keel even during the bad times.
I think the staking plan's hugely important, Pete. You can get carried away perhaps if you've had a good run, and equally, you could chase, for example, if you feel that you're on a bad run and you want to make back some losses. So I think sticking to the staking plan, and it's something we kind of consciously make an effort to try and stick to, is hugely important. Don't get carried away. Just keep a level head. I think when you're betting on golf, you've got to remember that you're not going to win every week. So if you start getting carried away and over exuberant, then you're going to get yourself into a bit of trouble, perhaps. So just kind of maintain that focus and keep your staking plan realistic and affordable. I guess at the end of the day, anyone to get into any difficulties. So just make sure you're always conscious of the actions that you're taking and making sure that it's affordable.
Yeah, some good advice, and so let's get on to some of their highlights, if you like. We obviously have losers, and that's part and parcel of betting on any sport. But what about some of the highlights? I think, was Martin Laird one of yours as well? It was The World and His Wife was on him, I think.
Yeah.
Is he the biggest winner for you? Or talk me through some of the highlights, and then we'll talk about the bad beats.
I'll let you do highlights, Neil, because I love a bad beat.
Well, we've already spoke about Big Jim Herman. He was he's still to date is our biggest winner. So he was put up.
Okay.
He was here in play on the Wyndham Championship last year.
Yeah, he was in play. In
Wyndham. So that's another great example of a guy that we trust in contention. So we are happy to take a chance on. I think it was after the first round. So we were on Martin Laird also at 275 to 1. That was pre-event. So that didn't actually count to our profits for the 2020 year on our tipping record, because we had a 6 to watch at that point. It was kind of like easing it in sort of thing. We've had a few good winners this year. Cameron Champ, 125 to 1 pre-event. That's probably the highlight. We had Christopher Broberg winning the Dutch Open at 100 to 1 in play. Trying to keep track. Duncan, anymore?
We had Romain Langasque last year at 66 to 1. Brian Gay at 100 to 1 last year. Sergio Garcia 80 to 1. I think first round leader at the Players this year. But I think that's maybe the thing I'd want to tease out of this kind of point, is that when we come onto figures later on, we put up a lot of pre-event winners last year, and we don't include any of them in our figures purely because they weren't stake bets. So like Laird, Langasque, Catlin, McIntyre, these are all guys that won for us last year in our 6 to watch section, and really that was us kind of launching a kind of basic website and just kind of dipping our toe in the market and letting people know that the Golf Betting Club existed. But at the time, it was very much a kind of, these are the players that we're following for the week. If you want to follow them as well, kind of thing. And we didn't put any staked bets on them. And they were very profitable as well, and probably would have bumped our ROR up quite significantly. But, we don't include any of them purely for the fact that they weren't staked bets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's talk about your record then. Obviously, at Golf Betting Club, you've been keeping a record this year that you're out of all your bets. Do you want to explain where you're up to with that for both the pre-event and the in-play?
Yeah, so I think it's probably easier if we give you an overall summary, I guess, for the last 18 months. We could be here all day if we start talking about it individually. So overall, we're up 560 points for the staked bets that we've had. So when I say staked bets, that includes all in-play bets from last year, and then pre-event and in-play bets from this year. ROI across that 18-month period is 30%, just over 30%, sorry. Obviously, again, as I mentioned, that doesn't include any of the pre-event bets or the big winners that we had pre-event last year. So it's really kind of healthy figures. We've been doing really well. And long may it continue. To kind of go back to the kind of bad beat and good beat, highlights and the bad beats. Like we had a lot of kind of what I would term as misfortune this year. We've got like an end of year review piece coming out on the website in the next couple of weeks, and the kind of the number of good positions that we found ourselves on a Sunday that just somehow didn't materialize was quite frankly incredible to me. I think we were on Colin Morikawa about one of the only weeks where he had a really poor Sunday. The guy wins 3 times this year and was a general superstar on a Sunday, and yet we had him in the Tournament of Champions January last year, and he sank away in the Sunday. So there's obviously other things like that as well, but I think that our figures have been really healthy despite what I would class as a few bad beats, and I don't think we're ever going to knock a 30% ROI over an 18-month period.
No, that's some really good figures, and I said at the start of the review, the podcast, we've done a detailed review. We've been proofing and following. We read your in-play information, read your pre-event tournament advice. It's very detailed. I'm enjoying reading that, and obviously evaluating your service. We've done all the analysis you'd expect in a Smart Betting Club review, it's just very interesting and very, there's a lot there. And like I say, with golf betting, you do need to be patient. Examine the numbers and look at what you can make long term, and certainly your service ticks all the boxes. So to understand, the pre-tournament bets are subscriber only. That's right, isn't it? And the in-play is free. Is that going to continue for 2022?
Yeah, that's going to be the same, Pete. So if you sign up, you'll get access to everything. So you obviously get your pre-event bets, and then all the in-play bets. We post a message on the Telegram group, just letting people know when the in-play bets have gone live. We usually give the subscribers a little head start as well in terms of price. So we'll notify the subscribers in the Telegram group that the in-play blog's gone live. And then we'll post it on social media a little while afterwards, just to give the subscribers that little head start on any prices that they may need. For the majors, we only give the in-play to subscribers. So if you do love our in-play stuff and you want to get it all, you would need to be a subscriber to get the in-play stuff for the majors. But on a general kind of normal PGA Tour or European Tour week, the in-play stuff will remain free for anyone who wants to go on golfbettingclub.com.
Yeah, great. So it's a really good way to introduce people to the service if they're interested in what you do. Certainly go check out the in-play, because I find it really, really interesting. Someone that enjoys golf, enjoys betting on golf, I feel like I've learned a fair bit, especially the pressure rating that you perform, the updates you perform on, the guys that kind of struggle under pressure and those that maybe thrive. It's really interesting to get a sense of the individual golfers and some of the things you were talking about, the profiles and how important that is. And I believe there's going to be, alongside the review, we've got an offer for people who are Smart Betting Club members. Do you want to detail what that is?
Yeah, absolutely, Pete. So our normal subscription price is £349 for the year, and we're happy to give a £50 discount to anyone that listens to the podcast or subscribes and wants to take advantage of £50 off the normal price of £349. So I think you're going to put the details in the review.
That's right, yeah. So it'll be in the review. It'll be on the members area for members to kind of get the link and the details of how they can take it up, because it's a kind offer, and also there's a really interesting service, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of interest in what you do. And for those people who are interested in finding out more, do you want to also, just to wrap things up, do you want to outline details on the website, how people can get in touch, how they can follow you on Twitter, those kind of things?
So website is golfbettingclub.com. We're on Twitter at golfbettingclub. And we just launched an Instagram, although there's not really much there at the moment, but it's at Golf Betting Club Official. We also have a Facebook group as well, but Neil's in charge of the Facebook group, so I'll let him plug that.
Yeah, it's just Golf Betting Club. It's a private group, so you need to request to be joined, but just click request and I'll get you in there straight away. No problem.
Great. I'll get involved. And also, I was going to say, go check out the website. On the website, what is fascinating are the player profiles. You've got like 125, and they're very detailed, right? So that must have taken a lot of time to put together. And you seem to update it regularly about how a player performed at a certain month and the particular performance. That's really interesting. And if people haven't checked it out, do go and do so, because you can learn a lot about the individual player performances and their pressure ratings and their win condition performance, all those kind of things. So
probably just on that, Pete, I was going to mention that if you happen to be old enough to ever read Elliot's Golf Form, and enjoy Elliot's Golf Form, it's obviously not available anymore. But the player profiles are I guess, a kind of homage to that, and that they'll discuss as the player had a baby that year. They got a landmark birthday, what we consider them to be like under pressure, and like Pete said, like you said, Pete, there's 125 there. We're going to now set off in the next 4 weeks to try and build as many profiles as we can in the next 4 weeks. So even if you think that you've seen them all, come back in a month's time, and there should be some more there for you to come and look at as well. So by all means, come and have a look.
Sounds good. Well, with no golf going on, what can we do? This will kind of fill the void until it returns in January. Wonderful, guys. Well, thank you ever so much for sharing your expertise and for talking us through your journey, your golf journey. They say the review is going to be out soon, so by the time you hear this, it'll be already out. And for anyone involved, interested, go check out all the links that you showcased there. So thanks very much for your time, gentlemen. I wish you all the very best for 2022 and with the service.
Thanks
very much, Pete. Thanks.